She only wanted a quiet afternoon at the park with her child. No crime, no wrongdoing, just peace. But sometimes the world doesn't see a mother or a human being. It only sees suspicion where there is none. Within minutes, police cars surrounded her and strangers watched as if she were already guilty. What they didn't know was that this ordinary mom carried a secret that would flip their assumptions upside down. How could a moment of prejudice turn into a lesson they would never forget? It was a warm Saturday afternoon, the kind of day meant for laughter, sunlight, and simple joys. Maya, a single mother, decided to take her young son to the park, a safe place where he could run free while she enjoyed a brief moment of peace. Her life was anything but easy. Between long work hours, balancing bills, and raising a child on her own, these quiet escapes mattered. To anyone passing by, she was just another mom watching her son play. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. But in a world where skin color often decides how stories are told, ordinary moments can take dangerous turns. What Maya didn't realize was that this day at the park was about to unravel into something far darker and expose a reality far too familiar for many. Maya sat on the park bench, her eyes following her son as he raced toward the swings, his laughter cutting through the warm afternoon air. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. But then she noticed it. A pair of uniformed officers lingering by their patrol car, their gaze fixed not on the children playing, but on her. At first, she dismissed it. Maybe they were just passing by. Maybe she was overthinking. But the stares didn't fade. They sharpened. They measured. Minutes later, the sound of heavy boots on gravel drew closer. Suspicious behavior. That's what they whispered into their radios as they approached, though all she had done was sit quietly, watching her child. Parents nearby began to notice, shifting uncomfortably, pulling their children closer as though proximity to her might invite trouble. Her son, sensing nothing, waved from the swings, his smile wide and innocent. Maya forced a small wave back, though her chest tightened. She had faced judgment before, looks in grocery stores, questions about whether she belonged in certain neighborhoods. But this was different. The officers weren't just watching. They were circling, scanning her every move as though she were prey. "Ma'am, can we speak with you?" one finally asked, his tone sharp enough to silence the nearby chatter. Heads turned, phones angled. A crowd was forming, but not to protect, only to watch. In their eyes, she wasn't a mother anymore. She was a suspect. Her heart pounded, but her face remained calm. Years of strength had taught her that panic only gave others power. She asked what this was about, but their response was vague, evasive. A concern raised about her presence, questions about what she was doing there. No mention of who complained, no real explanation, just suspicion wrapped in authority. As the questions grew sharper, "Where do you live? Why are you here? Who is that child?" She felt her dignity being stripped in front of strangers. Each word dripped with an unspoken message. "You don't belong here." Her son ran toward her then, his little arms swinging, his voice calling out, "Mom!" The sight of him only seemed to fuel their scrutiny. One officer stepped forward as if to intercept the boy. That was the moment Maya's resolve hardened. Enough was enough. But she didn't reveal her truth yet. Not here. Not like this. She knew timing mattered. She knew eyes were watching, recording, ready to twist her story into something it wasn't. And so she waited, letting the tension coil tighter, letting their arrogance dig deeper. Because when the truth came out, when they finally learned who she really was, it wouldn't just shatter their assumptions. It would expose the deep, ugly roots of a system that still saw a black mother as a threat before it ever saw her as human. And that moment was coming. The air grew heavy, the crowd silent except for the faint hum of phones recording. One officer stepped closer, his hand brushing against the edge of his holster. The other circled behind her, eyes darting between Maya and her son, as if preparing for something far more dangerous than a mother on a park bench. Her son clung to her leg now, confused, scared. "Ma'am, we need you to provide identification immediately," the taller officer barked, his voice echoing across the playground. She reached slowly into her bag, every movement calculated, every breath steady, because she knew how quickly fear could be mistaken for resistance. Then, without warning, the second officer reached for her arm. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. A child screamed. The world seemed to collapse into one sharp moment, her dignity stripped, her safety threatened, her son's wide, terrified eyes begging for an answer. And that's when Maya stopped holding back. With the same composure she carried into every undercover mission, she pulled out not just her ID, but her badge. The gold glint caught the sunlight. Undeniable, unshakable. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The officers froze. The crowd murmured in disbelief. Phones zoomed closer, desperate to capture the sudden shift. The same woman they had branded as suspicious was, in fact, someone who outranked them, someone trained to uphold the very justice they had twisted against her. The silence that followed was deafening. For a split second, power had flipped. But the damage had already been done. The humiliation, the fear, the public spectacle of being reduced to nothing more than suspicion. And as Maya stared back at them, one truth cut deeper than any badge could fix. If she hadn't been FBI, how different would this ending have been? The officers backed away, their silence louder than any excuse they could offer. The crowd, once eager to witness her humiliation, now shifted uneasily, some lowering their phones, others whispering as if ashamed of what they had just fueled with their curiosity. Maya gathered her son close, her badge still in hand, not as a symbol of triumph, but as a shield she should have never needed to reveal. The confrontation ended, but the wound remained. Because the truth was undeniable, her safety, her dignity, even her right to exist peacefully in a public space, had been questioned, not because of her actions, but because of the color of her skin. The badge had protected her this time. But what about the countless others who carried no such shield? Mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters whose stories ended not in revelation, but in tragedy. As Maya walked away, holding her child's small hand, she knew this moment was bigger than her. It wasn't just about one park or one set of officers, or even her role as an FBI agent. It was about a system that continues to see suspicion before it sees humanity. And that is the question that lingers. How many more ordinary days must be shattered before change comes? How many more lives need to prove their worth, their innocence, their humanity, before suspicion stops being the first response? This wasn't just Maya's story. It's a reflection of a reality too many still live every day. The next time you see injustice, silence is not enough. Because if we look away, whose story will be next?